In 1256, Duke Ludwig II of Bavaria had his young wife, Maria of Brabant, executed. The charge was adultery, but there was no evidence. The deed caused a stir throughout the empire, and even contemporaries saw it as a crime that could not be explained by jealousy alone. Maria of Brabant became the victim of a power structure in which personal grievance and political calculation were closely intertwined. Welcome, or welcome back, to Lemmy history. Maria's story bears a chilling resemblance to what Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard suffered some 300 years later in England as wives of Henry VIII. That is why I wanted to tell her story in a separate video, because she too deserves to be remembered. Maria was the daughter of Henry II of Brabant, one of the most influential princes of the Holy Roman Empire. She grew up at a court renowned for its education and its close ties to France. Her upbringing was typical for a princess of her time, courtly, devout, and politically shaped. As with almost all princesses of the era, her marriage was not a matter of the heart, but of diplomacy. Her groom, Ludwig, was more than 20 years her senior. He ruled large parts of Upper Bavaria and the Palatinate, a man of energy, ambition, and strict discipline. The marriage between Brabant and Bavaria was intended to strengthen old alliances within the empire. It was politically useful. Ludwig was ambitious. He considered himself destined for higher office than that of a duke. Maria was to help him get closer to the imperial throne, and to give him children to continue his line. But the relationship apparently remained distant. The sources contain no hint of affection, only signs of tension and mistrust. Shortly after the wedding, rumors began to spread. Maria had allegedly written a letter to a young knight, reportedly with words of affection. Whether this letter actually existed is unclear. The persistent claim is that it was a mistake. The knight received a letter intended for Ludwig, and Ludwig received the letter Maria had meant to send to the knight. It was probably a court intrigue that sparked Ludwig's jealousy. Without investigation, he had Maria arrested and condemned. He himself was the judge who spoke the words that would end his wife's life. In January 1256, the sentence was carried out. Only a few hours had passed since the verdict. Maria of Brabant was executed with the sword at Mangoldfelsen, near Donauwörth. The news spread quickly. Even in an age of harsh justice, Ludwig's actions were considered hasty and cruel. Years later, he founded Fürstenfeld Abbey near Munich, expressly as atonement for his wife's execution. Pope Alexander IV had given him a choice. Ludwig could either go on a crusade or found a monastery. Ludwig's decision was clear. The foundation was meant to bring peace to his conscience and to his public reputation. Yet the reputation of the wife killer clung to him. Today we are fairly certain the murder of Maria of Brabant was more than a private crime. At the time, the empire was in open conflict. The House of Brabant sympathized with King William of Holland, while Ludwig supported the Hohenstaufen heir, Conradin, to whom he was related. Maria thus brought connections that were politically useful but also risky. Her death removed not only an allegedly unfaithful wife, but also a possible opponent of his allies. Ludwig's jealousy may have been real, but it came at a time when conditions were ripe for action. After the execution, Ludwig sought to strengthen his position. He entered marriage negotiations with King Henry III of England. Henry's daughter, Beatrice of England, was a candidate for a new marriage. From Ludwig's point of view, this was a strategically smart match, because Beatrice's uncle, Richard of Cornwall, was at that time a serious candidate for the German crown, and would ultimately attain it. A marriage would have brought Ludwig into the closest circle of a possible future king of the empire. He might even have hoped to be considered himself as a candidate for the crown. His real goal remained in sight, but the plans failed quickly. The news of Maria's execution had reached England. A duke who had killed his wife was not an acceptable brother-in-law for a candidate for the throne. I'm tempted to make a joke that only a king could get away with that in England. But this story is far too serious for humor. The engagement was dissolved, most likely because such a marriage would have harmed Richard's chances of election. Ludwig thus lost the prospect of an alliance that could have decisively strengthened his political position. However, he would later manage to turn the situation to his advantage. His third wife was Matilda of Habsburg, a daughter of King Rudolf. From this union came the later Emperor Ludwig IV. In total, he had 3 wives. The latter 2 died of natural causes, as far as we know. The The fate of his wife was to endure as a mark of disgrace for Ludwig in a special way. To this day, he is remembered as Ludwig the Strict. The dark tragedy of the story is that today this is often taken almost as a compliment. It is easy to imagine that it refers to his treatment of criminals. In reality, it is the memory of his first wife, who became an innocent victim, that continues to define him. The story of Maria of Brabant is one of a deadly power game. Her death was the result of personal grievance, political tensions, and a legal system that gave princes almost unlimited power over their surroundings. Ludwig the Strict remained an important territorial prince, but the memory of his deed overshadowed his life. Maria of Brabant, the German Anne Boleyn, stands as a reminder of how thin the line between private passion and political calculation could be in the Middle Ages. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.